Hey folks, I'm pop culture historian Dave Sundstrom, and today we're going to find out what happened to three different 70s television stars. First, we'll take a look at the career of Judy Stranges and what she's been up to since starring in Room 222 and Electra Woman and Dinah Girl. And then we'll learn more about Caroline Ellis. She was on a Saturday morning program called The Bugaloos where she played a character named Joy. And then finally, speaking of Saturday morning shows, we'll catch up with Kathy Coleman, who starred as Holly on Land of the Lost. And along the way, I may have a few cool retro surprises for you. All right, let's get going. Judy Stranges, or should I say Dinah Girl. Judy was such a prolific television actress during the 60s and 70s. Even if you don't immediately recognize her name, I guarantee that you've seen her in something. For me, Judy will always be best known as Dinah Girl in the Sid and Marty Krofft Saturday morning classic Electra Woman and Dinah Girl, part of the Krofft Super Show. Electra Woman and Dinah Girl co-star Deidre Hall as the titular superheroine, and Judy was her younger sidekick, a female boy wonder if you will. The show was patterned after the Batman TV series from the late 60s, and just like that show, it was a whole heck of a lot of fun. But as I mentioned, that was the mid-70s. And Judy, well, she'd been working in the entertainment industry for a very long time. So let's go all the way back to Spike Jones. The legendary band leader was actually Judy's uncle, and his TV show from the early 60s allowed young Judy to make a handful of appearances. This wasn't her first gig. She'd actually guest starred in a few other TV shows and even made a movie earlier than that. But Uncle Spike's fame and notoriety helped other family members, including Judy, make important connections within the industry. In fact, Judy's brother worked behind the scenes on the aforementioned Batman TV series from the 60s. And Judy, looking very much like Dinah Girl undercover here, made an appearance on a couple of episodes early on. I think they were ones with Catwoman, and if I remember correctly, musicians Chad and Jeremy were in those episodes as well. After that, numerous guest appearances on many other TV shows followed, but it was on ABC's Room 222 where Judy's star really took off. From 1969 to 1974, Judy co-starred in that show as one of the students, Helen Loomis. According to IMDb, she was in 70 episodes, so most of them. My memories of Room 222 are that it came after the Brady Bunch on Friday nights, and sometimes, just sometimes, we could watch it. But because the show tended to tackle controversial subjects of the day, there were many Friday evenings where the old man would shut us down and suggest that we go read or something. I know, right? Go read or something? What was he thinking? Anyway, as Room 222 was winding down, Judy discovered that she was also a talented vocal actress, and she started getting steady work doing that kind of stuff. She was on Saturday morning shows like Hanna-Barbera's The Roman Holidays, as well as another fun show, Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch. While I wasn't a huge fan of either of these particular cartoons, it was her next Saturday morning project that would make me a fan forever. Yep, we're talking about Electra Woman and Dinah Girl here, and I got to say that it was Electra-fantastic. In a fairly recent podcast, Judy mentioned that all 16 episodes were filmed over the course of just a couple of weeks. According to Judy, they would film almost an episode every day. Holy cow, Batman, think about that. Making Electra Woman and Dinah Girl was really just a teeny blip in Judy's life, and yet here we are decades later still talking about it. After hanging up the cape and tights, Judy found work on TV shows like Chips, where she made a couple of appearances, and also on The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo. I promise to talk more about that show, which was a spin-off of BJ and the Bear, at a later date. For the time being, however, let's get back to Judy. In 1981, she provided the voice for the title character in the Ruby Spears Saturday morning show Goldie Gold and Action Jack. Goldie is a super rich heiress on the show. Think Paris Hilton kind of money, and along with her dog Nugget, oh yeah, and some reporter named Action Jack, she would, on a weekly basis, stumble into some kind of amazing adventure. I actually like this cartoon a lot. It came out right after Raiders of the Lost Ark hit the big screen, and although very different, it had a similar kind of vibe. Judy's last live-action appearance on TV was in a 1984 episode of Matt Houston, in which her character was, ironically enough, billed as Judith Stranges. Playing a version of herself, I guess. I'm sure a dramatically different version than the real Judy, but it did seem like a fitting way to say adios to her fans. Aside from a couple of small voice acting gigs, Judy's time in front of a camera or microphone appeared to be over. In 1987, Judy helped write the story for a CBS school break special about bulimia titled Little Miss Perfect. That particular episode was very well done and would earn Judy an Emmy nomination. But that, as far as I can tell, was it. So what happened and where did she go? Well, if you ask the internet, you will see various comments about a stalker of some sort. Most make mention that the stalker was never identified or apprehended, but it was enough to force Judy into making some very life-changing decisions. Again, I can't verify this, but if true, that had to be a very scary time for her. Whatever happened, we know for sure that Judy decided it was time to call it a career and just go live her life, and who can blame her for that? You know, there really isn't all that much information about Judy Stranges, the real person out there. In that same podcast I referred to earlier, Judy noted that she is a pretty private person, and I want to respect that. I do know she's married, or at least some point she was. I'm hoping she still is, and I also know that she kind of stays away from the whole social media thing. If what I mentioned earlier was true, it's easy to understand why she might want to avoid things like Facebook and Twitter. But that doesn't mean that she's a recluse by any means. Judy has made appearances at various events honoring her past work. Here she is in 2010 with cast members from Room 222. Seriously, it doesn't look like either she or Karen Valentine have aged a day. Pretty darn impressive. One might even say they look Electra terrific. And here she is with our boys Sid and Marty, along with Electra woman herself, Deirdre Hall. Wow. Again, these ladies look Electra awesome. I've referred to a couple of times in this video a podcast that Judy was on a few years ago. That podcast is called the Comic Book Central Podcast, and it's a pretty darn fun listen if you're into comics, TV, and movies. Judy appeared in episode 49, but the podcast is well over 200 episodes now. Like I said, if you're a fan of the same things that I am, you might want to add it to your podcast listening queue.
What education needs is teachers who'll tell it like it is.
You know, when one of you gets a D or an F, it means that I failed. I failed to get you to think about history. So in a way, your grades are my grades.
Mr. Dixon, would you please explain to my father how come you got a D on this test?
Terrific.
We have a problem.
Room 222.
I don't know what it was about the Bugaloos, but for whatever reason, as a preteen growing up in the 70s, this show completely fascinated me. I love the theme song. Talk about an earworm. And like all shows from Sid and Marty Krofft, the program itself was absolutely bonkers. And then there was this young lady, Caroline Ellis, who played Joy, the only female musician in the band. Her life has been an interesting one, and if you're willing to hang out with me for just a few minutes, I'll do my best to bring you up to speed. Airing on Saturday mornings from 1970 to 1972, the Bugaloos chronicled the adventures of 4 British accented teenagers who live in Tranquility Forest. Now, for some strange reason, they chose to wear insect-themed outfits with antennae and wings that somehow allowed them to fly. Episode after episode, the Bugaloos would thwart the evil deeds of Benita Bazar, played by comedian Martha Ray. Sid and Marty Krofft regular Billy Barty also starred in the show as a mischievous firefly named Sparky. The Bugaloos were actually meant to be Sid and Marty Krofft's answer to the Monkees. Casting calls went out across all parts of the United Kingdom searching for talented and good-looking musicians to join a band. At first, there was no mention that this band was going to be part of a Saturday morning kids program in the US, and perhaps because of that, the producers were beset with talented musicians auditioning for the roles. One of the musicians who auditioned and did not get a part in the show was Phil Collins. Phil would join Genesis just a few months later. Can you imagine how music history would have changed if Phil had become a Bugaloo? I shudder to think about the great songs that may have never happened. Because the Bugaloos were the Krofft brothers' answer to the Monkees, they had an album. It was actually a pretty good one, but it didn't have the kind of success that the Monkees had. A single was released, but it didn't even crack the Billboard Top 100. Still, the theme song is absolutely great, one of the best out there if you ask me, And if I were to pit it against the Monkees theme song, I would pick the Bugaloos song every single time. But enough about the Bugaloos. We're here to talk about Joy. Caroline. Prior to the Bugaloos, Caroline had appeared in a UK television adaptation of Sherlock Holmes titled The Boscombe Valley Mystery. And after the Bugaloos, Caroline starred in a handful of episodes of a British kids' TV show called Freewheelers. And then a few years later, Caroline found herself in this thing. I've never seen this movie myself, but a lot of folks have told me about it. And from what I understand, you can see more of Caroline, way more of Caroline, in this movie just by doing a simple search right here on YouTube. After that movie, Caroline's world changed dramatically. So much so that she took a step back from acting so that she could focus on her new marriage and then later on, a daughter. Caroline and her little family moved to Spain, where the climate was similar to what she'd experienced in California while filming the Bugaloos. And although her marriage would not last, Caroline's love for Spain and its people would endure. She thought it was the perfect place to raise her little girl, and as such, she became a realtor and began helping others find a place to call home, just like she had. And Caroline, well, she's never turned her back on those fans who loved her as Joy on the Bugaloos. And for those folks who want to stay up to date with what's going on in her world, she's fairly active on Facebook, which is where she let fans know that she would be attending the first annual CroftCon event scheduled for May 21st, 2022. And wouldn't you know it, I was there when she called in all the way from Spain. It was so wonderful to see her live, and it was even cooler to watch her interact with Sid and Marty Krofft. Now, in case you're wondering, that feller there with his arms folded to the right of the event's host is none other than Butch Patrick. Good old Eddie Munster himself. And Butch, it turns out, had a confession for Caroline. You see, Butch, who would star in the Sid and Marty Krofft show Lidsville, told the brothers that he really wasn't interested in doing the show, and it was only after a promise by the duo that he would get a chance to meet Caroline that he accepted their offer. That's just how popular Caroline was during the early 70s. And based on the response that she got at CroftCon, I'd say she's still pretty darn loved.
A world stopped in time, and the Marshall family struggles to survive.
I keep on wishing this was a dream.
If there's a way in here, there's got to be a way out of here.
What are they?
Ota, ota, lleva, ota.
Someone has fallen. He's hurt himself.
Come on, easy. Okay, I got it. Come on, hurry. Dad!
As a 10-year-old kid, I could not wait for Saturday morning to arrive to get my Land of the Lost fix. Unlike some of the other nuttier Sid and Marty Krofft shows, remember Lidsville? This one, while still not entirely plausible, had the benefit of a handful of great writers headed by the show's creator, Star Trek alumnus David Gerrold. Each week I would be transported to another land with amazing adventures filled with the often kind Pakuni and the always malevolent Sleestack. Man, I hated those guys. But as much as I hated the Sleestacks, I loved Holly Marshall. I loved her for a number of reasons, but here are the top 3. 1, we were roughly the same age. 2, she was kind and brave. And 3, she was really cute. Over the course of 3 seasons, actress Kathy Coleman would play Holly Marshall to perfection. This was not her first gig. In fact, prior to this role, she'd been in a group called the Mike Curb Congregation. This group had a top 40 pop hit in the early 70s with the title cut from their album Burning Bridges. I guess it was used in the movie Kelly's Heroes. They also had another hit in the 70s with a song called Sweet Gingerbread Man, and then they did a cover of the Sherman Brothers' It's a Small, Small World, which was a minor hit. Not sure exactly when Kathy joined the group, but my best guess would be somewhere around 72 or 73. After Land of the Lost ended its initial run in 1977, Kathy found herself at an awkward age in Hollywood where she was auditioning for roles with other actresses who were 18 years or older and as such legally adults, because they could pass for 15, 16, or 17, and the producers wouldn't have to deal with all of the special rules that come along with hiring a minor. These actresses had a leg up on Kathy, and because of that, she focused her time on school and other projects. She did, however, get hired for a Burger King commercial when she was 17. By the way, the image you see on the screen right now, it's a recreation. I could not find any archived images of the actual television commercials. Throughout it all, Kathy lived her life. She got married, she helped her husband maintain a farm. In the early 90s, she was contacted about reprising her role as Holly in a new version of Land of the Lost. Unfortunately, negotiations broke down and the producers made the decision to rewrite the character as Krista, another young woman who had been trapped into Land of the Lost. From time to time, Kathy would find time to act, but most often in local plays. She did, however, start to write her memoirs. Lessons learned from her relationships, lessons learned from life. She also began attending comic conventions where she developed a reputation as someone who was approachable and easy to connect with. When Land of the Lost was made into a live-action feature film in 2009, the character of Holly Marshall was radically reconceived. She was no longer Rick Marshall's daughter, instead she was a potential love interest for Will Ferrell's character. In a nod to Kathy's portrayal of Holly, there were scenes where she wore Holly's iconic plaid shirt and red corduroy pants. But it wasn't enough for die-hard fans who weren't interested in a parody. They wanted a legitimate action flick that had the same heart as the show, but with improved special effects. And it didn't help that Kathy's cameo was cut from the final version of the film. Still, you can find it on YouTube. I'll put a link in the upper right section of this video. There it is. Don't click on it yet because you need to know about Kathy's amazing book, Run, Holly, Run. I mentioned earlier that she had started working on her memoirs years ago, and it turned out to be a wonderful labor of love. You can pick her book up at Amazon. I'll put a link in the description field. You know, I bet she'd really love it if you picked up a copy. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. Kathy practices the fine art of positivity to perfection, and her book will not only take you back to the 70s and the making of Land of the Lost, but it will inspire you. Yep, I said it, the I word. This book is just that good. So that's it. Did you enjoy the original version of Land of the Lost as much as I did? And in particular, Kathy's performance as Holly Marshall? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And while you're at it, I would love a thumbs up, and I would be honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you all for standing by through and through. It's the kind of strength that lifts.
Introducing that king of fun. The one who's okay with us kids. The Magic Burger King.
In person?
Yay!
I'm the marvelous, magical Burger King. I can do most anything. Now watch me, kids, when I twist my ring like magic.
We're at Burger King. Is my Magic Burger King?
I'm the marvelous, magical Burger King. I can do most anything. I love magic and food that's fun. So I'll make a burger disappear, make it come back here. Turn apples into pies right before your eyes. Turn onions into rain.
As we can see.
Put a shiver in the shake. It's easy for me. I'm the marvelous, magical Burger King. I can do most anything. I love magic and food that's fun. So